So quickly, here are the answers for part A, negative 12 degrees Fahrenheit, 2 feet, the 6th floor in the basement, or negative 6, 27 feet apart, these 6 answers, and then these 6 fractions. So if any of that was wrong, you should definitely be watching this video so that you're prepared for Wednesday. Alright, so here we go. The temperature one afternoon is negative 8 degrees Fahrenheit. That evening it decreases by another 4 degrees. What's that evening's temperature? So the temperature is starting at negative 8 degrees, and then decrease means to go down. And the way I think about it is decrease starts with the letter D, and that's the same as down, whereas increase happens to be up. So if we're decreasing by 4 degrees, we are subtracting 4 or going down 4. From there, some of you can probably do this in your head. Others would like an open number line, and others would probably need to draw a closed number line. So if this is 0, then I know that negative 8 is going to be down here, negative 8 degrees below 0. And then the temperature is decreasing, which means you should have gone even further down 4 more. So if we are at negative 8 and we went down 4 more, we would be at negative 12. And if over the past month the open number line still doesn't make sense to you, that's fine. But you should be ready to draw a closed one like this on an exam where you draw each of the numbers above and below 0 and then solve the problem. So here, the same problem would look like this. We would start at negative 8 and we would go down 1, 2, and then you'd have to kind of keep going, 3, 4. So 3 would be negative 11, and then going down 12 spaces would get you to negative 12. So again, if you need that, just be ready to draw one out. Ms. Lugo is scuba diving on vacation in Mexico. She starts 8 feet below sea level. After seeing a shark, she swims up 10 feet. Where is she now? So another context we learned about integers is sea level. So 0 is like where the ocean is, 0 feet. And then a positive number means it's above sea level, and a negative number would be below sea level. So you have to see this. She starts 8 feet below sea level, and even though it's a regular 8, because it says below sea level, that means that this is actually telling us that Ms. Lugo starts at negative 8 feet. And that's something you just need to look out for. Below sea level would be negative, and above sea level would be positive. So, okay, that's the starting point. And then it says she swims up 10 feet. So if I'm at negative 8 and I want to go up 10, you could break it up any way that you want. But if we went to a friendly number, that would be going up 8. And I guess I could have written it like this. We're starting at negative 8 and going up 10. And I'm breaking the 10 up into an 8 and a 2. So with that 2 left over, I go up, and I end up, or Ms. Lugo should end up, at 2 feet above sea level. And again, if you struggle with the open number line still, then draw a closed number line with every number shown. Then you'd start at negative 8, and you'd go up 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Notice that's what we did right here. And then 9, 10, that's what we did up here. And we should end up at, again, 2, positive 2, or 2 feet above sea level. An elevator is on the 5th floor and drops down 11 floors. Where is it? So this was the most frequent context that we used. We talk about an elevator for most of this unit. And it says the elevator starts on the 5th floor. So remember, in a number sentence, the first number is the starting point. And then drops down 11 floors. That's just saying subtract 11. So if we do 5 minus 11, that will give us the new floor. So So on an open number line, if you were to solve this, we have to start at the 5th floor above 0. That's a positive 5. Every once in a while, kids pretend that this is a negative, maybe because of this subtraction sign. But it's a positive 5. And I know that 0's here, and I know that we're dropping down. So we're going down a total of 11 floors. Let's do down by 5 first, and that would leave us 6 left over. So we would end up 6 floors in the basement, or the negative 6th floor. And you should know that I might ask you for the answer like negative 6, or you might have to say 6 floors in the basement. And just know that that's the same as a negative 6. A quick check on our closed number line. If I start at 5 and go down 11, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 would get us to negative 6. Alright, so here's where you really need to read carefully and make sure that you know what the problem is asking. This problem says Mr. Corbett and Ms. Griffin are on a hike. Mr. Corbett is 12 feet above sea level. Ms. Griffin is 15 feet below sea level. How far apart are these two teachers? So if we break this up, we have Mr. Corbett is 12 feet above sea level. So that means if I were to draw a vertical number line where 0 feet would be sea level, I know that Mr. Corbett's going to be above it, somewhere up here. So I'm going to put a 12 feet up over here. And then it says that Ms. Griffin is 15 feet below sea level. And again, I said this earlier, that below sea level is telling you a negative integer. So she is 15 feet below sea level, and we just need to know that that means it's negative 15 feet. The negative sign just means it's below or on the opposite side of 0. Now the question says, how far apart are these two teachers? So here we're not starting at 12 and going down 15. This is not what this problem is asking. This problem is saying, how far apart are they? So I'm going to explain it the way that Marcus explained it once in a Do Now, and I think it was the best explanation I've heard. 12 is exactly 12 feet away from 0. So that would be 12. And negative 15 is exactly 15 feet from 0. So in total, if Mr. Corbett wanted to walk from here all the way down here, he would have to go a total of 12 plus 15, which is the same as 27 feet apart. And I think something else Marcus said was, if you find the distance to 0 and then from both numbers and then you add them together, that's going to give you all of the space in between 12 and negative 15. So hopefully you were able to figure that out just from reading it carefully. Alright, so some of you are at this point totally masters of taking fractions and writing them as decimals, but others are still confused, and that's okay, but definitely try and understand it here. So remember that in terms of place value, we have a number that's in the ones place, then we have our decimal point, then we have tenths, and then we have hundredths. And remember that decimals, when you go to the right of the decimal point, they're basically just telling you fractions. Like 2/10, this is 2/10, and 8/100, this is 8/100. They're just telling you it in a different form. So if I see a fraction that says 3/10, I say, all right, well, I see that there's nothing in the ones place over here. So in the tenths place, I'm going to put a 3. And I would say this not as 0.3, but as 3/10. 1/100th means, again, nothing in the ones place, nothing in the tenths place, but that in this place value, in the second digit after the decimal point, I need to put a 1 because there's 1/100th. Alright, so 87/100ths. Notice that, I think this confused some people at first, but you can't literally fit all of the 87 just in the hundredths place. But every time you have more than 10 hundredths, it shifts over to being a tenth. So 87 hundredths is basically the same thing as 8 tenths and 7 hundredths. And that's why we write it like this. We write it like 87 hundredths. I think the way that most of you guys probably think about it is whatever the last digit is, that 7, needs to be right there so that the whole thing can be read as 87 hundredths. Alright, so 3/4. 3/4, notice, isn't in tenths and isn't in hundredths. So there's a bunch of ways to do this. One way is just to think, well, 1/4 or 1/4 of a dollar is 25 cents. So that would mean that 3/4 is the same as 75 cents. But let's say you didn't think about that or think of that. You could have found an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10 by multiplying 4 times 25 and then 3 times the same factor to get 75 hundredths, which again is 75 hundredths. 3/5, again, we have to make it into a fraction that's tenths or hundredths. And since I can do 5 times 2 to get 10, I'm just going to do that. And then 3 times 2 is 6, so that means that 3/5 is the same as 6 tenths. Finally, this time we have a 2 in the ones place, so I'm going to put that on the left side of the decimal point. I don't have any tenths, so I'm going to put a 0 there, and I have 4 hundredths, so I'm going to put a 4 in the hundredths place. Alright, for some of your fraction problems on the state test, on the exams, in the future, it's going to make sense to take decimals and write them as fractions. So this is 5 hundredths because it's in the second spot after the decimal, so I'm going to write it as 5 hundredths. This one, again, the second spot after the decimal has a number in it. It has a 5, but that 1 is another 10 hundredths, so I'm going to write this as 15 hundredths. 5 tenths, because that 5 is in the tenths place, can literally be written as this, but you could also think that's the same as half of a whole, or 1/2. 25 hundredths, well, we just dealt with 75 hundredths right here, which was 3/4, so I know that that's the same as 1/4, or you could have written it just as 25 hundredths, because the 5's in the hundredths place. That's 25 hundredths. So 4 and 8 tenths, we have a 4 in the ones place, and an 8 in the tenths place, so it's 4 and 8 tenths. -2 and 4 hundredths would be -2 wholes, and then 4 hundredths. Hopefully that's starting to get easier and easier for you. Go ahead and check out the last page where I review for the exam.